From LPM,
Louisville Public Media.
Support for this podcast comes from LG&E, reminding you not to get spooked this Halloween. If you smell rotten eggs, hear a hissing sound, or see dead plants outside near other healthy ones, it could be a gas leak. If you notice any of these signs, leave the area immediately. Then call 911 and LG&E at 502-589-1444. Find more gas safety tips at lge-ku.com/gas safety.
Welcome to On Track. I'm Ayisha Jaffer. Every October, spooky stories resurface, and here in Louisville, none loom larger than the Goatman, also known as the Public Monster, said to haunt a railroad trestle in eastern Jefferson County. The legend has fascinated locals for decades and will be marked this weekend by the 3rd annual Goatman Festival. To help us unpack this creature's origins, the dangers tied to the legend, and how it lives on through the festival, I spoke with Michael Book, a scientist, educator, and entrepreneur. He's the CEO of Most Fun You Ever Had and Louisville Halloween, the company behind many of the region's most popular haunted attractions, and the author of The Legend of Poplick, exploring the cultural impact of Kentucky's Goatman. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
So, for those who aren't familiar, what exactly is a cryptid?
What is a cryptid? So a cryptid is a lot like a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch or a Mothman, one of these creatures that has a lot of folklore built around it. They are creatures that people believe exist, but we don't have any scientific evidence of that existence.
So, Goatman and Public Monster are the ones, of course, in this region, interchangeable, of course, the name, but it was also known as another name, right?
Sure. It started out as the Sheep Man, and I don't know at what point it evolved into the Goatman, but probably because it sounds more sinister and scary. But at some point, it evolved from Sheep Man to Goatman. It's always been the Public Monster, whether it was the Sheep Man or the Goatman.
Oh, so but that's been the through line this whole time.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Well, there are a few competing backstories for how this legend came to be. What do you believe to be the most compelling or plausible of the Goatman?
There are a number of legends surrounding the Public Monster, over the years, or the Goatman. The most common story that we've heard and we tell ourselves is about a circus train that crossed the trestle going towards Fisherville over off of Public Road, if you're familiar with the area. And lightning strikes this trestle and derails this train. And for whatever reason, I don't know why that would derail the train, but that's what the story is. And on this train was, of course, a very common thing at that time was a freak show. And within that freak show was this half-man, half-goat creature that was beaten into servitude, eaten, fed with table scraps, really, really mistreated, which is a very common thing at that time during the circus days, if anybody's familiar with the history. And the legend is that he escaped this train wreck and has been taking his vengeance out on humankind ever since, because that's who was treating him or mistreating him all of these years. Now, whether that's plausible or not, that's a different story, right? There are other stories that are involved with the Public Monster as well that maybe have a little bit more latitude. One of which is involving a man named Chess, or Charles McCartney, Chess for short. And he's known as America's Goatman. This is a real guy. And he was traveling the country back in the 30s through the 80s with a wagon pulled by about 30 goats, which is how he got the name Goatman. And he would roll through town, and he'd been, according to him, he had gone through all 48 contiguous states. And he had not gone to Alaska or Hawaii because his goats couldn't make it there, or his goats couldn't swim, which is what he said with Hawaii. But he would roll into town and he would tell these tall tales. He was, if you've ever seen the movie Big Fish, it was an embodiment of that character in that movie, really. And he would come in and he'd tell these tall tales because he traveled the country with these goats. He saw weird things. And he would light up a big rubber tire to let off this black billowing smoke to let people from around town to know he was there, and people would come in and listen to these stories around his tire fire. And our thought is that a family went and listened to Chess McCartney tell one of his stories, and when the kids went back to school the next week, they were talking about what they did that weekend. Oh, I went to see the Goatman, and a kid from across the class heard that, and kids being creative with what they are, took it and ran with it and became this story of this half man, half goat creature. That's what we believe, because that story intersects with a lot of the legends around the country, because this isn't the only Goatman in the United States. There are other Goatmans. There's one in Texas. There's one in Maryland. All of them are associated with some kind of train bridge or a bridge. But Chess McCartney is reported to have set up camp in all of these areas, including Pope Lick. So we have evidence and know that he was in that area at that time of when this legend became to be. So that, to us, is probably the most plausible. Whether that's true or not, we're still building evidence toward that.
Right. And what kind of stories do you know that Chess shared?
Well, I mean, he had a lot of stories, and one of the things that's kind of compelling with, I've already told you the circus legend, he was married at one time to a knife thrower in the circus. So you can see where there's a bit of overlap there, and he would be the person that would put himself on the knife wheel and have the knives thrown at him. And, of course, there are a lot of stories behind that, as you could probably imagine.
Trusting partnership, I guess.
Very trusting. I don't know how long they were together. They did get divorced at some point along the line. He was really a lone wolf. But, he had a lot of stories about people robbing him, because, there was an instance where he went to California. And, again, this is, based on what he said. So how much truth there is, I don't know. But he went to California, and the day he got there, and I think there is a police report on this, so that this may be plausible. The day he got there, he was mugged and stole a lot of the things he had, including postcards and stuff, because he would sell postcards. That's how he made money. And I think that he may even killed some of his goats in that process, which, is heartbreaking to him, because that was his best friends, right? And I think Billy Bluehorns, which was his favorite goat for 30 years, I think he was safe, but some of his other goats maybe weren't. So he had stories from across the board, just things that he experienced as he was out in the world, the things that he saw. He was kind of a fire and brimstone kind of guy. He was very much a preacher, so he had very interesting characteristics and personality.
I was asking that because I was like, I wondered if some of the stories were maybe like terrified someone, and then it sort of evolved from there as well.
Yeah, it may. Yeah. I don't know that his stories were more horror stories or campfire style stories, even though they were around a campfire. But they were more, I think more about his experiences, which he, of course, would embellish at that point and make even more grandiose.
I love that. That's so fascinating. So from a scientific perspective, because I know you look at it through this lens, like how do you examine the Goatman? Yeah,
so, I mean, every week we operate a shop at Legend at Pope Lick, and it's open every week and has been for several years now. And we have escape rooms there. We have a gift shop there. We have some artifacts there from some of the Pope Lick monster legend, and also some from the movie that was made back in the 80s as well. Because there was a pretty famous movie made around this. It was only 16 minutes long. You can go see it on YouTube or Amazon Prime. But we have people come in every week and talk to us about their experience with the Pope Lick monster or the Goatman. We have people that come out every week and tell us, I swear that I saw this thing. And, they would go to their grave claiming that this was true. And we can't discredit that. I'm not going to say, oh, well, you're a liar. That's not what we do. Because people believe this, and we haven't personally seen it. We've experienced unusual things, and we have found unusual things, but we haven't actually seen the Pope Lick monster ourselves. So, knowing that there are people out there that have seen this creature, or claim to have seen this creature, we have to give credit where credit's due, that there may be a creature out there that does exist. And because of that, I have a scientific background, so we approach it from a scientific level on, okay, well, if this creature does exist, where would he exist in this area? because a creature like this isn't going to survive, assuming that it's a physiological creature, isn't going to survive off of, the paint chips off of the train trestle or the iron. It can't eat that. It's going to eat things that a half man, half goat creature would eat. And there are some speculations that this creature may not even be a half man, half goat. He may be a mutated Sasquatch. Okay, so that's another theory that we've heard throughout the years. So using the information and data that we have, is it a half man, half goat? Is it a Sasquatch creature? If so, what would a creature like this, devour or eat? How would it sustain its life? Where would it survive? So that's the scientific, level that we go to, is trying to figure out where in that area or that space over hundreds of acres a creature of this nature might sleep, it might eat, it might hunt, it might communicate with other creatures or try to communicate with other creatures if they do exist somewhere. And that's kind of the approach we take. And we utilize a lot of, cameras and stuff like that, using some technology, not as much technology as we could, but there aren't many of us out there that are studying this creature, so there are some limitations on our end. It's not like we can go and get a big grant to look for the Goatman or anything like that to support it.
Not yet. Not yet. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're kind of looking at like habitat, like, is it near water, food, things like that this would eat. And I think that's really fascinating in a way that people don't think about it that way. So with your scientific background, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. And most people look at it from the perspective of, I want to go see the scary creature that is on or around this train trestle, and I want to see it or experience the attack from the Goatman, which I don't know why you would want to be attacked by that or have any kind of experience with a creature of this nature if it does exist. The only experience that I would think would be ideal would to be observational, to see it from afar and respect it as a creature in nature, as we would do with any creature in nature, and hopefully make that level of discovery. Whether that will happen or not, that's debatable. It's up to you to believe.
Right. And so, when people do come to you with accounts, how do you sort out rumor, hoax, folklore from primary sources of credible accounts?
We take in all of these accounts and we give credit to any of these accounts, right? Because people believe what they've seen. And, maybe there was a little bit of alcohol involved or something along the way that got them to that experience. I don't know. But we give credit to all of them. We weigh them all, and we try to look at the comparisons to see what is similar. Because in there, those similarities, that's probably where the truth is going to lie. Not to say that these stories aren't true. They believe them to be true. That's certainly the case. But we're trying to find that evidence to support that story. That's really our goal in looking at this thing.
And it sounds like you said you haven't had any personal experiences yourself?
We've had unusual occurrences. We haven't had a personal experience where we've seen this creature. And that's where we differ with some of the accounts that come in where they've actually seen this creature.
Right.
We have heard strange noises that can't be explained while we are in the woods. We hear a lot of animals, of course, and we're there all hours of the night in some cases. And you'll hear snorts and stuff like that, which is, in general, it's mostly deer or buck or something that's in the area. But we've heard more ape-like sounds, which couldn't be explained in that area. Doesn't make any sense why that would exist. It's more consistent with the Sasquatch theory, that maybe there's a Sasquatch or maybe a mutated Sasquatch in that particular instance. We have had instances where we were back there with a group of people doing a kind of a guided nighttime experience, and something was following us, and we couldn't pinpoint exactly what that was. Traditionally, most animals aren't following you through the woods. So that was a little unusual, and we heard some kind of unusual sounds along with that. We have also found unusual prints that we've even taken castings of. And it wasn't necessarily us that found those prints. We were, again, with a group of people kind of researching the area, because that's one of the ways that we do this research is we go out with groups. and make it kind of an active research / tour type of thing. And they discovered this very unusual print, and it looks like a hoof-like structure or a hoof-like footprint, and it's big enough that would be similar to, or the size and scope of, a creature that is claimed to be this Goatman, which is somewhere between 6 and 7 feet tall and can run upwards of 30, 40 miles an hour by accounts that we've heard.
That sounds horrifying to me. Like, I wouldn't want to encounter that myself. But, it's true. I mean, the Goatman legend has drawn so many seekers over the years, and people have tragically lost their lives on that active Pope-like trestle. Given that risk, what steps have you and your partners taken to deter people from going there and to help fans engage with the story in a safer way?
Yeah, and that's one of the unfortunate and darker sides of most folklore. Any kind of folklore, there's going to be a darker side of it, and it is very unfortunate that people have lost their lives seeking out this folklore in the area, or this cryptid in the area, however you want to refer to it. Some people don't want to call it a folklore because they believe it to be a creature. And the steps we've been taking is trying to educate the public, because looking at that trestle, if you see it just even driving past it, it doesn't look like it would be an active trained trestle, and it is in fact a very active trained trestle. And we try to educate people not to try to explore this creature, this story, by going up on this trestle, which is one of the rumors that is how you experience the Goatman, is to go up on this trestle and you come face to face with him, and that's how you meet your demise. Where that kind of took a strange turn is, reality is that he was luring you up there. So you wouldn't necessarily go up there on your own. You would be lured up there because he uses voice mimicry, and he can do mind control and all these strange things that he's credited with being able to do. But you don't want to go up there at the end of the day. There's probably a train that goes across it at least every hour, maybe even more frequently some days. And once you're up there, there's no escape, right? That trestle, once a train is on it, it's going 30, 40 miles an hour. You're not outrunning the train. One, there's nowhere to go off of that trestle. There are no sides on it. The train, in fact, will hang over by 1 to 2 feet on each side. So it's very wide compared to how narrow that trestle is. So there's nowhere to go but down, and you're 90 feet in the air. And you can imagine what would happen if you try to jump. And the other option is to try to hang on to the trestle itself as the train is going across. And you're talking about a train that's very long. How plausible that is, very unlikely that you could hang on to that. So don't go up there. And the other approach we take, outside of educating people about the trestle and the dangers of the trestle, and we even have signs within the gift shop, you can't outrun a train, and don't go up on the tracks, all of that. And we try to give people an outlet to seek out the legend and talk about that story with us directly. But from the scientific perspective, as we talked about, a half-man, half-goat creature isn't going to exist on a trestle. It's going to exist in the woods. So if you're wanting to find a creature that may or may not exist, you would actually be looking in the woods that surround the area, not a trestle where he would lure you up anyway. So you would want to try to find him observationally out in the woods. So going out into nature and experiencing nature, and while it's going to take some patience, maybe that's the way you can experience, and maybe you can find some tracks. Looking in the creek below, you might see footprints along the creek bed, stuff like that. That's a way to experience it with, and respect the trestle and respect the railroad company. As you can imagine, being a railroad engineer and you're driving across, and the thing you see is somebody staring back at you. The memories from that, I can't even imagine living with that for years and years to come. So stay off the trestle. At the end of the day, that's the message we try to impart.
Yeah, and actually, I'm just curious, because we were talking about like the experiences and accounts that have come to you, and the ones that you've had. Have those mostly been in the woods?
They have. They've been in the woods and the fields that surround it. So we've heard, and you can even see there's a pretty detailed account on a TV show on Hulu called Out There that someone provides, where they encounter this Goatman in a nearby cornfield, and there is a field there that corn is planted on occasion. So that is certainly plausible that story is credible to their point. But that's where they experienced the Goatman, and we've had accounts where we've heard people see the Goatman in the soccer fields in the Public Park, which is right across the street. It's on the property, where this creature was running 30, 35 miles an hour across this field hunting deer. We've not encountered any, deer carcasses or anything like that, to my knowledge, where we've seen that. Now, we have found something called tree structures in the woods, and these tree structures are rumored with Sasquatches and Bigfoot-style creatures, where they build these structures for either communication or some kind of worship or something that we're not, we just don't know why they build it, or letting other Sasquatches know that it is a safe area to be in. And we've actually found structures like this in the woods, in areas where people just do not go. So there's no explanation of why a structure that's 20 feet tall like this would exist back in the woods where humans just aren't at on a normal basis. Could someone have gone back there and put this up? Sure. It would be tough with the size of the logs and such that are in this tree structure, so I can't discredit that possibility. But why they would do it in this area, I haven't the foggiest why that would exist there.
Wow. And to find that too, it's got to be you guys are doing some deep research out there.
Yeah, and it was just coincidence, and that's usually with any research. I do medical research on top of that. Most of these findings that we have are accidental or coincidental. We're aiming. We scientifically know how something works and how something should be able to be found with the answers we're trying to find. But the reality is, what ends up happening is we find it by sheer luck.
And I'm just curious, I know we talked about this a bit, about the safety and how that's kind of intertwined with what you do. But, I'm sure you get some concerns from people even celebrating the Goatman, brings some unintentional people drawing near. How do you kind of balance sharing this story with making sure safety stays front and center?
We always have safety centered at everything we do. It's our number one priority with our entire business. And even before having anything to do with cryptids, safety has always been our primary concern. So safety, and then, entertainment with that side of the business, making sure people have fun and doing it in a safe way. And yeah, there's some criticism with the Goatman Festival. Again, I can see both sides of, the fence on this. We aren't out there celebrating the darker side of things. We're out there and we're not even necessarily celebrating the creature as a whole, even though it's a Goatman Festival. But what we're really celebrating at the heart of it are these stories, okay, and storytelling, and talking about something that, years and years, decades ago, that we would have sat around a campfire as cavemen and talked about this tale of this encounter, and that was our form of entertainment, talking about something that we encountered, and embellishing it, of course, because that's just what humans do, right? We embellish those stories and make them seem more exciting and more grand than maybe they actually were, or maybe they just were that crazy of an experience. It's certainly possible, but celebrating those stories, and that's why at the Goatman Festival we don't just talk about the Goatman. We're talking about cryptids from all over. Primarily, we're looking at cryptids in Kentucky, or have some kind of overlap with Kentucky, but not always. So we have people coming in talking about Bigfoot and Sasquatch, the Mothman. There is someone that's going to be talking about the Snallygaster, one of the more unusual ones. Goatman, of course. The Hopkinsville Goblin, or the Kelly Greenman, is the same thing. That's Hopkinsville, Kentucky. So there are these stories that go generation to generation, and we're just prolonging that story. And also trying to do it in a way that is providing an outlet that's safe for people to experience it. Because we're not doing it and encouraging people to go do something that is dangerous. In fact, we do the very opposite of that.
Yeah. And you mentioned these other cryptids in our community, which I love that you're bringing in the Kelly Green and the what was it? The
Snallygaster.
Snallygat. That one I've never heard of before.
There's even a museum for the snallygaster.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, very unusual.
So, I mean, how strong is the regional cryptid community and how do these worlds kind of connect?
So the community is actually very strong. The people that believe in them wholeheartedly. Again, we believe that there is some evidence there that there is an existence of these creatures. Now, when you study these creatures, you start to see a lot of overlap between them. There are various versions of what would be considered a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. So you've got Bigfoot, Sasquatch, you've got skunk ape, you've got a whole host of different ones that are very similar bipedal creatures. A Yeti is another one that's very common for people here. And there's differences, just like there are differences with humans, right? Humans, we have different complexions, we have different color hair. The same thing can apply to any one of these creatures. And then you have Nessie, which is another very popular one that most people have heard of. But there are other ones that are local to the United States that are very similar to Nessie. There's actually even one rumored in LaGrange somewhere, this kind of creature. But there are several of those across the country that have been rumored to be seen. And flying creatures like the Mothman, you have the Jersey Devil, which is a very similar creature, but slightly different. And it could be just different mutations of these creatures that exist. Or, it's something that we all just see, and it's so unusual that we're trying to look for ways to explain it, and it becomes this creature. Again, that's something for whether you want to believe it or however you want to believe.
Well, what do you feel makes the Goatman unique?
The Goatman's pretty unique in that there are a number of different stories surrounding this creature as far as its origin. There are some rather twisted versions of that story. And then there are maybe little cleaner, quote unquote, stories with like the circus train, which is the more common one that we've seen. But we've also seen this story in multiple places across the country, and having that overlap with Chess McCartney, the America's Goatman, is certainly fascinating to me in that there's something there. Even if they aren't necessarily connected, it would appear that there could be a strong connection there. And just trying to shake out where those connections lie, that's pretty fascinating to me.
And what ignited your interest in the Goatman?
Well, I've been interested in monsters all my life. So I had an unusual uncle who was on the radio for a long time. His name's Jim Bullitt, and he was on TV as well as an anchor. And he introduced me to horror back when I was 3 years old. And most people nowadays would be like, "Oh, you don't do that." But this was a long time ago at this point. But he introduced me to horror movies, and he would keep little ketchup packets in his pocket so he could put it on his mouth to try to scare me. And then the ripe age of 4, he introduced me to haunted houses. So I was always really intrigued by monsters because of this. Terrified, but intrigued by it. So I started, drawing, doodling monsters, and had to go to counseling because I was doodling monsters. But I grew up with monsters. That was just, and that's what the counselor said. He just really likes monsters. So nothing wrong with me. As I got older, I started to create my own monsters. I was drawing my own monsters, of course, but started to learn how to create them using movie special effects and stuff like that. And then got my undergraduate in special effects, industrial design. Did a lot with B movies and theater, stuff like that. Worked at Actors Theater here locally for a while. One of the stranger things we built was a robotic sheep, which is kind of funny because it ties into the sheep man / Goatman. But it was this robotic sheep for a show called Slide Glide the Slippery Slope. And the sheep would come out and it would roll out on stage and it would talk and it would wag its tail. And then it ended up traveling the country. So There's this robotic sheep traveling the country for
Amazing.
This show, which is really strange. But I was always fascinated with creatures from the early age and creating my own. And then because I was involved with haunted houses for a long time, encountered this folklore or this story of the Poplick monster, and I was, kind of flabbergasted that nobody had tried to recreate that story in the form of a haunted attraction or a haunted experience, and that's where it kind of started. And from there, that fascination just continued to escalate. How much of that story we kept hearing, and how many of the different things that we kept encountering that were unexplainable. So it's just a whole host of things that built into what it is now.
I was 6, if that helps. I was so much older. My brother showed me Puppet Master was my,
Mine was Freddy Krueger.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, oh, my goodness. Well, this is the 3rd year of the Goatman Festival. Oh, my goodness. What sparked the idea for the festival? It sounds like love is part of that passion. And what can people expect if they attend this year?
Great question. So we've been operating the Halloween Festival for a long time. It's going into its 22nd year. So we've had, a history of producing festivals as a whole with our company, just because it's, a passion of ours. In fact, I started with festivals when I was a kid. My grandmother started the Strawberry Festival over 40 years ago, and I was always involved with that. So festivals have always been a part of my life in some form. And at the time, we were operating the haunted attraction about the Pope Monster. And after 2020, we changed pretty dramatically the type of thing or type of presentation that we were providing our guests, because we learned that, everybody that loves Halloween doesn't necessarily love being scared. And that wasn't the type of experience that we wanted to provide. While we do want to have the scary experience, sure, we do, and we still have that. We also wanted to have fun experiences for people that wasn't into being scared, but loved the Halloween vibe and love Halloween. And we started to integrate different types of entertainment outside of just this haunted trail, right? And we had performances, we had music, we have movies, we ended up having vendors, and that kind of escalated into, okay, well, this is getting to the point where it just needs to be a festival in and of itself. And also at that time, Mothman Festival in Pleasantville, or Point Pleasant, was becoming a fairly popular thing. So we kind of mimic that concept a little bit. There's far larger than ours, of course. And there's also in the city streets. Ours is in a park setting, in the setting of where the Pope Monster actually is rumored to be, which is a little unusual. And, we have vendors, we still have performances, we have the haunted trail, we have a bus tour that we do, because we do integrate a little bit of the paranormal into cryptids, because there is similar qualities there and similar interest with people between cryptids and paranormal, even though two dynamically very different things. So that's where it really started, and since we've done it, it's grown every year. There's a lot of local artists that participate. There are artists from other areas of the country that come out that are really into cryptids and cryptid art. And you'll see a lot of art there that you wouldn't see at another festival here in the city. And that's what makes it weird and why we call it Louisville's weirdest festival.
I love that. Well, and they say keep Louisville weird, right? So
yeah, that's right.
So if people want to learn more about the Goatman Festival, or even resources about cryptids, what do you suggest?
Sure. If you want to learn more about Goatman Festival, which happens this weekend, October 10th and 11th, you can just simply go to goatmanfest.com. We have a schedule there of all of the different seminars, and it's completely free. So you come out, it's a free event. We've got free movies. We got live music all weekend, both days. We have bands that have written songs about the Pope Monster that are going to be performing, which is pretty cool. In fact, one of them is a brand new song, just got released. It'll be performed on Friday, and then another one that is being performed on Saturday. Wrote it several years ago. So you can find information about the festival there. If you want to learn more about what we do on an annual basis outside of, the fall or Halloween season, which is really our peak season, you can go to legendatpoplick.com. The two are connected, so if you go to one, you can easily get to the other one. So legendpublic.com or goatmanfest.com will take you there. You can get information about the tours, about the escape rooms, about our gift shop, all the stuff that you want to find. And as far as cryptids, there are a number of great cryptid websites out there. There is one that is Kentucky-based, which I would like to mention. It's the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization. This is ran by a named Charlie Raymond. He's actually going to be at Goatman Fest and has been, not last year, but the year before, so he's been here before. He is specifically an expert in Sasquatch and Bigfoot, although he has done research on the Goatman as well, and he takes in accounts that people submit to him of their experiences with the different cryptids, whether it be Bigfoot or Goatman, from all across Kentucky, and he publishes it on his website. So you can read more about these different accounts from people, which is really cool.
That is cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
On Track is produced by Louisville Public Media. Our production team includes Michelle Tyreen Johnson, Laura Ellis, and me, Ayisha Jaffer, with assistance from Alex Biscardi. Our music is by Kojin Toshiro. Find more at LouisvilleOnTrack.org or on your favorite podcast app. And remember, being kind is free. That's the start of community. Thanks for listening.
Support comes from Vision Zero. On foot or behind the wheel, safety is a shared responsibility. And Vision Zero Louisville believes 0 roadway fatalities is the only acceptable amount. Their mission is to create safe roads by design, engineering solutions, and education. More information at visionzerolouisville.org.
Behold the Colonel's giant KFC chicken sandwich, a towering, extra crispy monument to flavor. Such a huge amount of juicy, hand-breaded KFC chicken at a pretty tiny $3.99 price for the Colonel's KFC chicken sandwich. I mean, $3.99 isn't even worthy of the same epic soundtrack as the KFC chicken sandwich for only $3.99.
The Colonel lived so we could chicken.
Prices and participation vary while supplies last. Taxes, tips, and fees extra.